Monday on Daily Delivery. Happy President's Day, Patrick Reusse. How you doing?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Boy, they had a washout here yesterday in Fort Myers. It rained all day long. It was raining hard. Still raining a little bit this morning, but they're probably get back on the field. But I don't think I don't think Buxton's going to be out in the outfield taking fly balls, right? Until we get a little dry, get the conditions a little drier than they are today, because the swamp down here got himself a pretty good refreshment of rain yesterday. So.
Is that how it's going to be this year? I mean, it makes sense right now, but we can't play Buxton when it's too hot, too cold, too wet, too windy, things like that.
I would guess, he's claiming to be 100%. So we'll see. This is it doesn't sound like it was that elaborate of a surgery. So it was a tendonitis last year, and now all of a sudden you remove some flaps of skin from behind somewhere in the knee, and it's going to be okay. Well, everybody, I guess, wants to let him do what he can do. If he can play center field, that's fine. And if this doesn't work, I don't know. It could be just a buyout, because I don't think they were able to insure that contract. I would think we're not,
with all the history,
or if they did, with all the history of injuries he had when they signed him. So they took the $100 million flyer, and you wondered why he signed for only 100, and then you find out that he probably figured he better take what he can get. So we'll find out, but that would make a hell of a difference if he could play 5 out of 7 games every week, huh?
Yes, it would. It would. And interesting spring for the Twins all around. And I don't think I realized this until reading the other day, but this is 50 years since your first spring training with the Twins. Now, you referenced that you've missed a couple here and there since then, but the last two, right?
Two, and only one before that, 1990, when Clem went to the final 8. And I was supposed to be down here the last 10 days, but it was the last year in Orlando, actually. I was supposed to be there for about 10 days at the end of training camp. But when Clem was going to New Orleans, I wasn't going to miss that. And as I said in that column, also, if I hadn't been there, Richard Coffey wouldn't have hit me, kicked me in the head, and I wouldn't have been on, I wouldn't have went on blooper videos for 25 years. I was proud of that, because not only was it in the blooper video, but when they were selling the blooper videos on TV, that was one of the 4 or 5 things they always showed, was him getting me in the head with both tennis shoes. The part of that story that was the greatest, though, of course, was he saw Richard Bay, the athletic director, at halftime, and said, and Bay said, "If you do that again, I'll give you $50." So Richard and I weren't getting along too well at that time. So that was pretty funny. Anyway, it certainly has changed. I mean, you had the run of the 1974. As one thing I try to point out, Michael, is the airlines weren't deregulated. The idea of flying to spring training never occurred to anybody. I mean, you weren't, there were, honest to God, you knew the names of the fans that came down, and they drive. Cully Anderson and his wife. There was about 4 other guys that drove down with their wives, and then the fans in the stands from CCO, which used to be about probably 100 at Zenith. It was probably down to 50 by the end, but that was it until the airlines got deregulated, and then you'd start to see a few more people, and plus, Orlando Disney World was like in its 2nd year or something. And so people, then started later on tying it in with trips to Disney World and going to a couple of Twins games. But in the early years, there was no Minnesota fans down there. And they draw 300, 400 people for a game. Except if the Yankees or Boston, Boston came over from the Winter Haven, then they'd get 1,000 people. And if the Yankees came in, for once a year, the Yankees would come in, and they'd fill up a crowd, and and Calvin would go nuts when the Yankees didn't send all the regulars. Now you just you go with it. You don't worry about whether there's any regulars playing or not. You just I mean, I'm sure fans still come and get disappointed, but it was great in the early years because you had, as I said, you had the run of the place. If somebody left the game in the fourth inning, you just wandered out and walked into this little clubhouse and started talking to them. And there was only the other thing was the reporters were there was a guy from the Star, a guy from the Tribune, and then me from the St. Paul paper because I covered them both. And then Sid had come down, as I pointed out, and later in spring training. But the columnists, maybe the columnists from the Star would show up, but there were 5 or 6 of us, and 1 or 2 of the TV stations might show up for 3 days in the middle of it. But there was, we were the only source of what's going on down here. So we'd try to create these dramas of who's going to make the team. And because back then it was like, well, they did not. They probably knew who 20 of the guys were going to be, but they'd compete for the, this guy's having a great spring. He's going to make the team. Well, that's what they do down here anymore. Doesn't mean anything unless they're really awful and lose their spot on the team. They know who's going to be on their club right now, unless Buxton, if Buxton can't go, then you change it. Then it becomes completely different. If Buxton can play, then Willie Castro is probably the backup center fielder. If Buxton can't play or can't play a lot, then a guy like Austin Martin gets into the picture or something. So it's a completely different world than it was. And it's, we back in the day, we'd make up little dramas. Oh, man, this guy's, but you'd sit there and you'd watch the whole games, and now we didn't write them as much by 74 when I started. You didn't really write them as game stories.
Sure.
But if you go back in the 60s, they wrote exhibition games like game stories, like just with a couple little notes on the bottom. So it was certainly not as organized, and there weren't 500 coaches running around, and there wasn't all this planning, but it was more intriguing in the early years because they hadn't made all their decisions. And if Calvin got mad at something, you got to remember this, the ball club was being selected by the owner. Calvin was also the general manager. Okay. He made the decisions, and he got his back up about something. Somebody'd be gone. So it was fun. It was great, but it was completely different world, and it should be 50 years. Yeah,
everything's different, like right?
Everything's right. The idea of 1974. You go back and look at that. Twins probably had 50, 60 games on television, maybe.
Wow. Which was probably a lot compared to 10 years before that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It was. When they first came, I think it was, I know for years the only home games were 4 Friday nights in June and July. So the Friday nights they were home. That was it. And I think that was when they got up to 50 games. 46 were road games and 4 were home games. That was it. But the idea back then, Mike, was that if you had the game on TV, people weren't going to come and buy tickets. And we were a little cheap back then. We didn't spend a lot on entertainment like we do now. So it probably was accurate, the 60-year-old Swede and his wife living in Bloomington were going to go to the game if they could watch it for free on TV. They weren't going to spend $6 for a ticket, for goodness sakes, So it was a completely different world, but it was fun. It was great.
I feel like spring.
Of course, I also quit drinking in '81, which kind of changed the whole element of spring training too. So back then, you used to have to, you have to hit the saloons after you were done writing your. I wrote 2 stories a day because I had to do the morning paper and the afternoon paper in my St. Paul days. So that was a little different. But what you'd also do is you'd look at the roster, right, and you'd make little check marks at who'd you written a story about. And then you'd write,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
and you had, I got to write this guy because he's not going to make a team before he gets sent over to Melbourne. The minor league complex was over in Melbourne. So, and that never really changed all the time they were in Orlando. That was probably the biggest reason they moved to Fort Myers, in addition to the stadium, was that so they could have some property to put the minor leaguers the same place the big leaguers were. Because Melbourne was an hour and a half away, probably over on the water there, where they where they shot off the spaceships. So that was a little bit different too. But the other thing, in Orlando, they had the main field and a half a field, and that was it.
Oh, wow.
They had they had a little, and they called the other field where they could hit infield and stuff. The maintenance was terrible. They call that Iwo Jima, because it was so rocky. Everybody said he'd go look for somebody and say, "I think he's over at Iwo." He'd walk over there and they don't find somebody. So yeah, it was a different world, but it was great.
It seems like spring training lends itself to characters and to a different, like a singular pace, right? Like NFL training camp is like, at least, yeah, it's changed a little bit now because they can't work the guys like they used to with the new stuff in the CBA, but like 2-a-day practices, and it's like we're getting in shape, we're getting tough for the season, and NBA training camp nobody cares that much about. And NHL, they like start playing exhibition games after about 12 seconds.
Yeah, they have a scrimmage the first day of practice, and 2 days later they're playing a game at the X, charging you full price. The guys have been here 20 minutes.
So like, what is it about? Yeah, baseball spring training. I mean, the characters, just the difference of it there.
I think in modern times it would be much shorter if they didn't have all these facilities that were financed publicly down here.
Okay.
Where they have to play, they have to be home for 15, 16, 17 days so these people can get some of their money back, right? The people who, they built the stadium for the Twins, and then they pumped another $50 million in it when the Red Sox got their place. And the Red Sox, they spent a couple $100 million on that place, and they've improved it various times. And the city or the county or all these public entities that do this, so you're stuck playing way more games than you probably have to, don't you think?
I would think so.
I mean, Rocco was saying this 2 days ago. You used to have to build them up. The pitchers would come in, and the first BP session would be kind of soft off, a half speed BP. These guys are throwing BP to hitters. Saturday, I think they started having regular batting practice, and that would have been unheard of. I mean, full speed BP, and 4 or 5 days after they get here. So it's longer than it has to be. And the other thing is, they're not making decisions. They were making decisions for years. Now they don't. Somebody can come and, Bobby Witt now can come as a 19-year-old kid and be the best player in training camp, and he's still going to go back to the minors because they don't want to give him that service time, whether or not. I mean, I was out in Arizona when Griffey was there at 19. When Griffey was there at 19, and they said, no, he's going to the minors. He's going to the minors. He'd go to the minors, and then he was so good they put him on a club, and that you could do that then. But now, unless somebody gets hurt or something, they know who's on their team already. And it depends on Buxton's knee and stuff. Some of the decisions, but. I was thinking, here's what you do. If here's the difference. They know who's going to make the team, Wallner or Larnach. They probably Wallner, right?
Yeah.
Back in the day, we'd be writing every day, Wallner looked good in BP, but Larnach's coming on. It would be like this competition, and you get 3 stories a week out of Wallner versus Larnach. Now they know what you can't get any quotes on that. I mean, back then the manager was into the into the idea of competition,
Yeah.
competition. Now they probably will just. They got about 8 right-handed relievers that are fighting
They
for about
they keep signing
4
guys.
spots,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's something to, I think how somebody looks this spring, like Jay Jackson or something, probably determines who's going to be on the team. If one or two of those guys is terrible, but as far as competition, they know who's ahead of who, and who's the only thing that can change things now are injuries.
Yeah.
But back then we had competition, or at least we made it competition,
Fill the paper. Yeah.
to fill the news, to fill the paper. But yeah, as I said, a completely different. And the operation.
Oh yeah.
You got Calvin, right?
Right.
Calvin.
Right.
You never could ask. It would be impossible to ask Calvin a question that he wouldn't answer. He might say he wasn't going to answer, but he ended up answering it. And so you had Calvin, then you had a manager and 3 coaches. They got
Yeah.
they got 9, 10 coaches, but they have. A couple of days ago, I was over there, and they went over for their pre-practice, workout session.
Yeah.
And they do it. They do it up on one of the little platforms in the stadium. There had to be 20 guys there.
Oh wow.
Getting ready to, okay. And when you warm up a pitcher now, these guys wrote a thing about the 4 invited
The
catchers.
yeah.
Yeah, those guys who always have to bring in catchers. They get a scouting report on each pitcher they're going to warm up.
Wow.
They can, I'm sure it's emailed to them, or it's the message to them or something. But okay, we want him to work on this today, and this is the pitch, and this is what he's likely to be throwing to you, because these guys haven't been in camp, and some of these pitchers haven't been in camp, but it is so organized. I said in that column I wrote it, it's a little different than when Johnny Padres was standing next to the guy smoking a cigarette, saying, let's see your change up,
Right.
Hey, way to go, champ, and stuff like that. And it was just a different world, numbers wise, organization wise. But what they spend on development now.
Oh yeah.
Compared to, we talk about all the multipliers as far as salaries are concerned. Huge difference. 100 Twins are going to spend 130 million, and we're going to think they're cheap, right?
Right.
And but what they spend on on employees and organization and all that stuff is 50. I'm not kidding you. It's 50-fold from what it was when I started.
Wow.
It's just incredible, because you knew everybody in camp. Wayne Hadaway, right? The crazy little guy. Wayne, big fella, died a couple of years ago.
Yep.
He always greeted me with something, very encouraging, like, "Boy, you're as fat as Calvin this year," or something like that would be his opening remark. "You got even fatter this winter." But he was always worried about everybody's weight. But, he was he had to be an 8th grade educated guy. He was in AA with the Orlando team as both their equipment guy and their trainer. If somebody got hurt, they'd have to call a doctor over to one of the hospitals and bring him over. They didn't have trainers.
Wow.
Now every minor league team has 2 trainers.
Yeah.
And 2 trainers, and then another workout guy, equipment guy, got weight, strength coach too. Every one of the minor league teams. So it's the world is, it's like the world, it's changed. So
one more thing on this before we get on to other sports. Who's on your 50 years? Who's on the all characters team? We know who. We know the Twins have had characters over the years, but I'm sure there's been people from that are almost like singular to the spring experience, where maybe they didn't quite make the team, or they didn't, you didn't know about them as much as you did if you were down there for spring. Who are some of those characters?
I was trying to think of of some of that the other day, and the stuff that comes by. And I mean, these are guys who made the team or
Yeah.
something, but so great lost in the years as a pitcher like Joe Decker, who was one of the great characters
Joe
of all
Decker.
time.
I don't think I know him. Yeah.
He was a pitcher. He had popped up and won 16 games one year.
Okay.
He's the most amped up human being in the world. He had one good year with him. The next year in spring training, he couldn't throw a strike. And he threw hard for that, probably 95 back then,
Right.
and they couldn't convince anybody to take BP against him. I
Oh,
mean,
geez.
they were all afraid they were going to get
Yeah.
hit in the head. They'd go in there and they'd go running out of the box and stuff like that. I mean, there was always, every year there was something crazy like that happen. And here's what I was thinking about.
Okay.
It's pretty good because 74, you start off, and they never really had a manager who was that hard to deal with. It's
Yeah.
I mean, Quillisi was a great guy. And then Billy, and then you get Mock, who was, outsiders might have thought he was a jerk, but he's my favorite guy ever because he took care of the hometown guys. And plus he and I and Bob Fowler go out to dinner on Saturday night, and Mock was a terrible drinker, not in quantity, but he'd get 4 drinks in him, and he was like, you thought you were going to have to help him. You thought you were going to have to help him back to the hotel, but then he'd start telling you everything. And but the secret you learned is when you saw him again the next day, that never happened.
Okay.
That was not like that. You could not act familiar. Was I'm always saying like, okay, we did this last. That was social. That's got nothing to do with baseball.
Yeah.
But Mock was great. And then he went home, and poor Johnny Gorel was just great guy, scared to death managing. They did him a favor by firing him. He only had the job for like 3 months total. And then Billy Gardner came along. He was nuts. He's the most fun guy we've ever had. He'd say anything. I was trying to write that when he died just recently.
Yeah.
I was trying to write the fun obit for him. And about 8 of the greatest lines he ever had were so inappropriate I couldn't write them.
Yeah.
Stuff you just couldn't. Let's just say that he did not have a proper 2024 view of Jim Eisenreich's Tourette syndrome problem. Yeah, he would analyze it a little differently than they done. But anyway, so all this stuff. And then Ray Miller was kind of a jerk, but he couldn't shut up. He'd fill up your notebook every time you ran into him. And then we had TK for years, and then we had Gardy for years.
Great,
and, Molitor was great, and Baldelli's good. Baldelli's boring as hell before and after games in the full setting, but when you talk to him as a guy, he's a hell of a guy, especially since he got the Twins. He can make a lot of jokes about the Twins. I saw him the other day, and I said, "You are the whitest man I've ever seen." And he said, "That's because I haven't been out of the house in 4 months. I've been in there with the 3 babies." So, but he's a good guy. So they've really had, people think I'm prejudiced toward baseball, but they've had good guys to get along with. Nobody's ever been. They've never had the angry man coaching them or managing them. So that's made it good. And it's I'd have to think for a while. Maybe next week I'll write down a few names and remember a few of the great characters who were, the guys who were trying to make the club. But a lot of the fun there too was you have guys like Sparky Anderson, managing the Tigers, and he'd come over and he'd fill up he'd just start talking. And Earl Weaver's my all-time favorite manager, home or away. He's everything you've heard about Earl being a character is understated. He was such a character. And And so you had people like that, and you got to know, the opposing managers because they didn't have that many people to talk to back then. There wasn't like there was no ESPN dominating their time or anything like that. It was just us, running around. So yeah, it was pretty good.
Well, 50 years, it sounds like it's it's a lot of fun. There's so much there. Yeah, I'd love it if you wrote down some of those characters at some point. I bet that'd be fun.
About way back in the late 70s, I probably first said the greatest invention in the history of American sports writing, spring training.
Yeah. Go down there for...
You go to the Super Bowl, that's fine. You can go to the Super Bowl. I'll go to spring training
Give me
anytime.
5 weeks in the sun. I have to get away from the winter time. Yeah.
That's the only guy who likes spring training more than me, or did. I mean, I've slowed down, but Lavelle is, I was happy to see Lavelle's coming down because the cigar bar out here can now put their full staff back on duty here. They lay off when Lavelle leaves town. They lay off 2 people. We always say so.
Oh, that's great.
Lavelle walks in any place in Fort Myers around the ballpark. Lavelle, here he is. He's back.
Grand Casino would like to take a moment and salute the true football fan. The passion, the hope, the anticipation, that incomparable feeling of winning. Grand Casino would also like to take a moment to remind you that you can find all that anticipation, thrill, and winning at Grand Casino. Grand Casino, let your story begin.
I guess we better talk some sports that are happening now. Gopher basketball gets a win yesterday. What are they, 7-7 now?
7-7 in the league. They played great for 37 minutes. I watched the whole game. That's as good as they can play. The game against Iowa, they were just throwing in threes the first half. They looked great because they were throwing in threes, right? And same thing with Purdue. They made 6-7 threes the first half. And Iowa, they played awful the second half. There's no doubt about it. But this was, I thought, a really solid game, and Pharrell Payne was magnificent.
I like him a lot.
But the moves he was making around the basket and stuff, in both the Iowa and Purdue games, he got in foul trouble with these reaches, He did none of that. And when he went to the basket a couple of times and went left-handed and stuff like that, he was tremendous. He outplayed the Rutgers big guys who Rutgers have been playing good. They'd won 4 in a row.
Right.
And they are really good defensively. They hound people pretty good. They switch good. And but else played great defense yesterday, and I haven't looked at him that way. Dawson Garcia played really good defensively. Now, I don't want him. I think we have established we don't want him to be the inbound passer under the basket with 3 minutes to go. However,
no.
Throwing bounce passes into triple teams is not what we're looking for there, sir.
No.
And Elijah Hawkins will give you a nervous breakdown
but he was really good. He was good in that game. He was really good
for most of the game. Threw in a couple of threes, but he kicked it away about 3 times when they scored 11 points in 12 seconds.
Right.
That would have been the worst blow and loss in history.
Yes.
But I thought they really played good. The 2 ways. They got a little out of Ola Joseph again, and then they didn't play him much in the second half. But I don't know what happened to him. I don't know. There must be a reason they aren't playing him. I don't know what it is. I guess they like Parker Fox better than him. But they played good last night, and that was I thought that was the best game I've seen them play.
Yeah,
because it was start to finish, except for the 3 minutes of idiocy. But they're the tournament's here. They get some people in the building. They get some people in the tournament. They could get to this. I can see them getting to the semifinals. I can see them getting, beaten. They won't have to play. They'd have to win 2 games to get there. They won't have to play the first round. They won't have to play there's 4 teams that play. 4 teams play the first day, right?
Yeah, it was
something
usually
like
like
that.
11. Yeah, the 11 through 14 these days play that
Yeah,
first day, and then they get it down to
yeah.
12, and then they kind
And
of
then
do the
then you're gonna play one of those teams, and they should beat them. And they can, Purdue's vastly overrated, and Ohio State proved that again
right.
last night. But they're good, but they're not the number one seed in the country like the committee in their first release had them
Right.
there. And, Wisconsin has really gone off the cliff,
Yeah.
and so it's not the league isn't that strong, I don't think. So
No.
they could win a couple games, and that would really, if you could make a little Big Ten tournament run, which I mean would be win a quarterfinal game. That would change the program a lot. Here's your problem though. There's going to be some overtures made for Christie, and there's going to be some overtures made for Payne. And are they going to have the money to keep them?
Yeah.
I mean, I never thought we'd get to the point in college basketball that we'd have to say, are you going to be able to it's everybody's got free agency. Okay. Everybody's got free agency.
And here's the thing. They say you're not supposed to be able to use NIL as a recruiting enticement. That's all it is. That's what they use it for. That's exactly what it is. Like, what are you talking about?
And now it's being covered like, well, yeah, he's got all kinds of offers.
Right.
I mean, it's just, what did they think? It wasn't going to be used in recruiting.
Right.
When this all started, it was like, well, they should be able to go and buy themselves a hamburger, have enough money to buy themselves a hamburger and
right.
go to McDonald's on campus there, which doesn't exist anymore. But
it's there.
They should be able to. Oh, is it back now?
It's in the bottom of that big apartment complex.
Oh, okay, all right. So, but it was like, yeah, they can't even afford to buy themselves a hamburger or something. And now they, supposedly that guy Evans, the guy who went to Louisville, and thank God the Gophers didn't waste their money on him. But suppose they got 400,000, something like that. I wonder if that's refundable. I wonder if Louisville would get their money back. So
it is amazing.
Yeah, but it is. I mean, you watch him now, and it's you're saying, okay, who's going to be back? This Christie, they were lucky to keep him, and he can shoot. They got to do more to get him shots, don't you think?
Yeah, he's the future. I mean, they're kind of this weird mix where he's kind of the one guy where you look and you say, okay, here's what you're building around. The rest of the guys are, a lot of veterans, guys they've brought in that have stabilized things like, Hawkins and Mitchell. So yeah, Payne and Christie are kind of the guys they're building around. But you're right, they need to get him more going.
Yeah, and what did he do? Who's he got coming in? They got the guy the guard from Cherry, from
right?
Up north, and then a tall kid from Alex. But that wasn't a very deep recruiting class. I don't know if he felt like he didn't have enough scholarships left, or if that's the best they could do. But they're going to have to. Yeah, I assume he'll play for him some, but he'll give him a little relief from Elijah. At moments when Elijah's had one of his nervous breakdowns and is running around like a crazy man, which he does on occasion, but he wasn't exactly a sight of stability when they were present there in those 3 minutes either. But he's been obviously good for them, in the long run. I mean, he's just a little goofy, but. Yeah, they played good last night. I thought it was a very impressive performance.
Still feels to me like they're probably going to be 1 or 2 wins short of the tournament. But you're right. If they can make a Big Ten tournament run, that could change the calculus. That non-conference was just so bad. Whatever their net rating is, it just takes a hit from that.
Oh, it's awful. Yeah, I'm not necessarily saying it gets them in the tournament. If they get to the semifinals, I don't think it does. But it changes the perception in town. I think it creates some excitement. And then we could say, the Gophers got robbed. They should have gotten rid of it, didn't they? And there's nothing we like better in Gopher fandom than to say we got robbed. The Purdue beat them because they were the Gophers were coming down, shooting brick threes in the second half, and Purdue was going to the basket and throwing it into Edey. And we were very upset at the differential in fouls, 10-2 at one point. Well, if you're shooting rocks from 25 feet, you're not going to get a lot of fouls called, folks. So, but Payne changed his game completely last night. Now, he was not in foul trouble, and the other thing is, Eric Curry and his two friends let them bang each other around a little bit. I thought the game was extremely well officiated last night because they let them have some, there was some contact, but not excessive contact. But Payne was terrific, man. That was the best game I've seen him play.
Royal Credit Union's smart checking accounts offer no monthly fees and no minimum balance. Enjoy financial freedom when you open your Royal Credit Union smart checking account online at rcu.org/go-checking. Insured by NCUA.
Probably a better game than the one that ended up 211 to 186 yesterday, the NBA All-Star game. Maybe we'll finish there. I didn't watch it. I'm just kind of, I can't do All-Star games. I can't do All-Star games anymore.
Well, I can't. No, I don't care. The NHL All-Star game, I don't know who's playing who, so I'm not going to watch it anyway. Plus, it's 3-on-3, right? That's the last I heard anyway. Yeah. But this thing I stopped watching 5 years ago, probably. But I saw the score last night, and I was disgusted. I clicked over a couple of minutes, a couple of times by accident, and they were throwing a lot. Everybody was going 60% speed, and they were throwing lob passes down the court and doing it was slow motion Harlem Globetrotters. The Globetrotters at least did it at speed,
right.
And it's just asinine. I don't know why we bother with it. I mean, I go back. I covered, I think, 3 of them, maybe.
3 All-Star games, yeah.
We went to it and they played. It wasn't fierce. They weren't going to fight each other. It was, you tried to win it in the fourth quarter. Everybody mess around and what'd you tell me that was the great quote from the great Draymond?
So Cat wound up with 50 points in this game.
Yeah, 31 in the fourth quarter.
31 in the fourth when it didn't matter.
So did he get robbed out of the MVP?
I don't know. They were down big, and that was part of the Draymond quote. He said that I think they have like some sort of alternate broadcast like they like to do these days, which are generally kind of fun. Yeah. And he said it's just like the old Minnesota teams. He had 40 at the time. He said Cat's got 40 and their team is down 20.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. As the old saying goes, you could knock me over with a feather that this team has reached the All-Star break with only 1/3 of the season remaining.
Yes, less than 1/3. Yes.
Yeah, one game less than 26 games left. And with the best record in the West, they've had, 3 bad losses, maybe? 3, 4?
Yeah, they had the stretch of like 10 games where they had like 4 big leads that they blew. But, it's also like, it's going to happen sometimes. It's the NBA.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just because, if I just think of all the games that the Wolves fans have declared before that little stretch where they blew some games, that they wouldn't have won this game last year.
Right.
According to Wolves fans, they would right now, if it was last year, they would be 2-54 or something like that.
Something like that, yeah. They would be.
They would have had no wins, as only, So, but it's I wonder if they're gonna I was down at Glenn Taylor's place last week, and we're getting ready for when he gets the cell going, and I got an hour and 37 minutes on tape, but which I got to go through. But Glenn's expecting him to still get a buyout guy. So the last time he talked to Connolly, he thought they were going to get a buyout guy. So we'll see how many of them are left here. Did the other Morris twin make his decision yet, or didn't he get a buyout yet?
I don't know yet. I haven't seen the buyout market yet. I was too worried about the trade market. But Monty Morris seems to be a good fit so far.
Yeah, I think that was a good pickup. I didn't know much about him, but they needed that. They needed another guard. So they need a shooter. I would have liked to seen him get Gallinari, but
maybe that's what they can. Maybe that's the kind of thing they can get in the buyout market. But yeah, I mean, going back to this idea at the beginning of the year, I didn't see this coming. I was like, they got to make a move. They got to get rid of Cat. They got all these salary problems coming. And
nobody more guilty of that. I thought they'd be trading Cat this time.
I did too.
And a month into the year, I still thought they'd be trading Cat, but it seems he and Ant are certainly putting on a good front of being buddies, which is you don't know about.
You never know.
You never know. But it's what we've found out is really having your best friend in life on the team might not work. I mean, he and D'Angelo were like.
That was what we were told, yeah.
What? I could never figure it out because they went to different colleges and they ran into each other for about 20 minutes.
Right.
But the angle was, they're not only is he, not only can we get rid of Wiggy, but we can get Cat's best friend.
Right.
Okay. How'd that work out? So I think we spent a little too much. The NBA is such a social media phenomenon that we even worry about who are friends or not, right? Yeah, I mean, they're friends. He's probably going to go sign there. I see LeBron has sworn that he wants to be a Laker for life, so look out. He'll be somewhere else next year.
He's got those opt-out years. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, it should be interesting. I hope it would be just the Wolves' luck this year, of course, because you got those teams lurking down in like the 8-9 seeds. Golden State and the Lakers are down there. Dallas is, might be in the bottom, might be in like 6 or 7. Like the first round series is not going to be a layup this year, no matter where you wind up. The West is just so deep and got some of those veteran teams down there.
I think I would be more afraid of the Lakers than the Warriors.
Yeah, at this point, I probably would too.
Anthony Davis is Anthony Davis is the secret ingredient there. If he's healthy and interested in playing, he's got a chance to be the best player on the floor a lot of nights. So that would be. But you're right. It is kind of the new NBA. You don't have the 69-13 team playing some team that got in the playoffs.
46, got
in the playoffs. You don't have that. So anyway, but the NBA All-Star game is I didn't watch it, and and just looking at the score, it was an embarrassment.
It was embarrassment enough just to know that it happened.
I might be the only guy in the history that was in Vegas about 10 years ago and bet the over and under for the All-Star game and lost. I don't know what it was then. It was like it was in 250, maybe 260, something like that. That'd be gone by the end of the third quarter.
Yeah, they get to 397 in this game for their total. 397.
Do they think that impresses people? I don't know. I don't know. What difference does it make? It's All-Star game. Baseball is the only All-Star game that they can play a facsimile of the game.
Yes.
But it's only a facsimile because they bring in a new pitcher every inning who's an all-star. It's hard to score a run. Baseball's All-Star game problem is not too much offense. I'll tell you that.
Yes.
It's not with those pitchers. So.
No. All right. All righty, sir. Well, I appreciate everything today. I'm sure we'll have more to get to next week. Are you fired up? The Loons are going to start soon. You got your soccer? Are you fired up for soccer?
I can't believe that when is their first home game? March.
First home game is like early March. Yeah.
Well, what is this? This game is the summer game. Stop closing it down for 6 weeks to play Mexico. Who cares? I don't care about Liga. Okay?
All right, Patrick. We'll talk to you later.
All right. See you. Goodbye.